Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. I'm PD Rave, and I'm always here. I don't have to be back. I'm a proponent of the Mac as well. Also, show me the way to the next titty bar, personally.
Petey, we're on Twitch, for God's sakes.
I mean,
yes. But yeah, here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got David.
I'm considering buying some plants.
Mm-hmm. We've got Matt.
Oh, don't ask why.
Mm-hmm. And we've got Brett.
So I need to figure out what part of the Gold Coast of Florida this sin-ridden boom town exists in, because we're gonna go to
Yes. And
we're going places.
I believe we have somebody else. We have Drew.
Oh God. Oh no.
Oh,
I don't.
Oh, I'm
here.
Drew, I didn't know. Okay. Everybody, thank you all. It's been great being on Record Breakers. Really appreciate it. Had a great time. Everybody, DeltaJulietMike.com. You all know the stuff. You all know the deal. Drew, great
You're
to
not
see
getting
you
out of this that easily.
Okay.
Sorry, corporate Drew is here.
You still have to talk about this album.
Straighten up, fly, right?
All right. Okay.
We're here to talk about music. We're here to talk about an album, and it's an album brought to us by Matt. Matt, what have you got for us this week?
I have brought an album by the Sextet of Orchestra U.S.A. with their album Theater Music of Kurt Weill, featuring Eric Dolphy.
Dolphin.
It does.
Yes.
Features the hell out of them.
Yes. Let's talk about expectations. Brett, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
I know Three Penny Opera. I know that story. I know Mac the Knife. I know Mac Tonight. I know all of the things around Mac the Knife, and all of the ways that it's a standard. But as for the rest, I don't know if this will shock anyone, but I don't know a lot about show tunes.
Oh boy.
You're not a jazzy show tune guy?
Yeah, Paint Your Wagon. We could paint your wagon all day long, but this isn't Paint Your Wagon.
It must be it must have been a while, because I could have swore. But all right.
Yeah. David, what were your expectations coming into this album?
David? Oh.
His expectations
he's gone.
were bad.
Let's go, Drew. What were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, seeing the list of songs, seeing it was theater, I was expecting some jazz, but what I got in terms of jazz,
3 tablespoons of jazz.
But I was expecting a smidge of jazz. But to see what I got was fun. But my expectations were kind of all over the place. I didn't know if this was all music or not, but we'll get to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all music.
Yes.
If there was vocals or not, you know what I'm getting at.
It's both kinds.
I couldn't think of the word instrumental. My brain wasn't working.
And it's big band.
Yes. Let me see. Damn.
If only we had some clarinet bossa nova to hold us over in hold music form.
Oh, there you go.
Oh no,
my guitar's in the other room.
I was just about to make a joke about DJM looking at us like how these like looking at Brett like at the disappointed white guy, like, oh, mother. This.
I've grown used to it. You guys are okay. I just figured that the podcast was caused my computer to blue screen because, well, Drew's back.
Yes.
Like, oh,
But yeah.
all right, okay.
David, what were your expectations coming into this album?
My expectations coming into this album was something that would be very, very studious. Usually with albums like this, they are very musician friendly. It took a little bit of digging for me to find information on this album because of the myriad of musicians and versions of songs that you'll find on this. It's something that I often find frustrating when it comes to playing the standards. It can be very hard to really track and trace down what it's all about. But overall, I expected something that would be enjoyable, kind of like the Kenny Burrell album. It would be enjoyable after a long day, which is generally how I find a lot of jazz.
Yes.
You have to be... I like to, maybe at the end of the workday, put on some jazz because I'm a pretentious bastard. And that's kind of how this felt.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect with this album, but other than like that album cover could not be any more generic and clip
That's
art.
a textbook cover. That's like music.
It's
the third grade book.
It's very generic, and yet it's very accurate.
Yes.
It's extremely accurate.
There's instruments.
Yes. They got instruments.
It's
like
yes.
It's like this is your
assume
required textbook for
them.
This is your required textbook for jazz and popular music class in community college. This is
yes.
Matt,
And it costs $600.
God, yeah. Matt, and you sell it back and you get like $2.
It was digitally remastered, guys. That rainbow little text at the bottom, digitally in Technicolor.
Yes,
Got
Matt,
all the ones.
Yeah. Matt, you were coming in blind as well, because you had picked this up on a whim, similar to my picking up Dale McBride's "Let's Be Lonely Together" at a Goodwill.
Did this come from the half price books dollar bin, like this copy of RoboCop?
Yeah.
He's part man, part machine, all cop.
No, I had to buy
$3.
this on eBay.
Damn.
So I've partially inspired by this podcast, I've been having this growing Kurt Weill obsession. Because over time, I just keep getting these different musical connections. And so for those who are less aware, he wrote a bunch of theater music, shockingly enough, in the 1920s. Three of the songs that kind of are the connective threads for me is Mac the Knife. That's probably the most famous one. Bobby Darin did it. Brian Setzer Orchestra did it exactly like Bobby Darin. Louis Armstrong did it. But before that, it was in this Threepenny Opera. Also by Kurt Weill is the song Alabama Song, parentheses Whiskey Bar, as you may have heard performed by The Doors or David Bowie. Yes, folks, it's that one.
Yes.
And lastly, just the icing on the cake for me is when we listened to the William Shatner album. And one of the tracks was Lost in the Stars, also written by Kurt Weill.
Yes.
And so that was kind of the last catalyst.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the final catalyst for me to go, okay,
the final
I need to explore this obsession. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so on the Wikipedia page for Alabama Song, it mentions, Eric Dolphy, this avant-garde jazz musician, he recorded it. And so from there, I did some Googling. It was pretty hard to find the freaking album, but I finally found it on eBay, and here I am. Themes and elements wise.
Yes.
If you asked an average person to describe jazz, I feel like this is pretty close to what they would come up with.
Yes. It's when they go to.
Yeah,
It's
and
essentially a textbook definition of
yeah. It's down to the point where it's like, no, even to me and probably Brett as well, I am assuming a lot of it just sounds like random notes. Like once you get in the headspace, there's a lot of jazz that oh no, I see what they're doing with this. No, it's a lot of just random notes. Eric Dolphy, the guy who I kind of was one of the things that grabbed my interest. He only plays on the first 3 albums, and I definitely thought the bass trumpet was a trombone until about 10 minutes ago when I looked at the lineup once again and realized, oh, there is no trombone listed on it. I guess that's just a bass trumpet the whole time.
This album lacks a boner.
It does.
Petey,
Thankfully.
for God's sakes, we're on Twitch.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that on this album. Wow. Like there are choices that were made.
Yes. Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
I mean, we'll get to the bass clarinet, but so this was a bunch of show tunes that were of like 1920s and 30s that were rewritten in the 60s by 60s jazz people, and there's not a lot that has to change. And in the liner notes they even talk about how there wasn't a whole lot of work that they had to do, but there are some things that you do that you see more commonly in pre-World War II jazz, like the clarinet, and other such things that if you think about, like, listening to your AM radio for Armed Forces radio, the kind of nasal sound of the horns, like that's your clarinets, everybody, which makes me wonder whether or not the quality of radios to the switch of saxophone being the more popular lead jazz instrument from clarinet may have coincided with one another. But the other thing that's a little different about this is it's they're show tunes, so they follow a story. It is theatrics, at least a little bit. And having listened to some of these songs in the theatrical version, thanks to YouTube, because I have read Threepenny Opera. I have not been to a production of it.
Remember going to productions of things?
I do. It was pretty wild. But one thing that with songs that are written to tell a story is they're moving the story along, and sometimes there are movements and changes. So it's not the straight up, like, the standard round robin, everybody gets to do their solo, and then we come back around, do a good turnaround, and like the dishes are clanking, and that kind of jazz. This is more of a, we're telling a tale, but not necessarily like a ballad. So that's very different, and way different than things that I normally listen to. Also, there is probably some context that I'm missing on some of these songs, which is probably the most generous way that I can try to explain a couple of choices made with the use of dissonant noises.
Yeah.
And going straight, like hitting all the. I don't know how a trumpet makes the noises that they do, or like singing the song of the Canada Goose, as I will mention later. But there is some artistic use of noise, but jazz style.
Yeah. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Drew, you are muted.
I got into my expectations of the album once I knew it. But knowing that my turn back in the seat here was going to be brought to us by Mr. Squiggles, I was not expecting the horn that I got on this album. I made joke last night during D&D that I did not expect such a horny album to be my first one back.
We're on Twitch, Drew.
I was trying to give him enough of a pause for you to bust in there, dude. So
there's a cornet on this album. The marching man's French horn shows up.
There's a bass trumpet. Like, do you know how not often that's a phrase that can be said? Like, what?
It was pretty great.
It was, but jazz of this era is always striking for a few reasons. The tone gives it away, like, to a ridiculous degree. You also have a lot of noodling. So you have songs that you recognize, but there is some noodling ass solos that happen all over this album, and because of that, I actually had a lot more fun than I thought I was going to get started. But overall, I guess that's sort of what hit me the most was there was a lot of cool, like, sort of freeform-ish solos, which get lost in the weeds, but it was way more out there than what I would figure, like, the standards would be at this time.
Mm-hmm. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this album musically as me getting a lesson in empathy towards because my love of progressive rock, I can understand at times how that can be a lot of widdly and a lot of playing and instrumentation that seemingly doesn't go anywhere, but it's also telling a story. It is this in jazz form, and it helped me understand why more people have issues with prog. Like, I get that now. I get it through this album. Yes, there are horns, and no one has to get bonked, and it's kind of cool. It is kind of cool.
Yeah. It's very, like, there's a lot going there's a lot going on with, like, songs that like are familiar on the surface, and then, like, it's like, wait, I know, I remember that. No, it just kind of goes off into a distance. It's like, oh wait, now I remember this song. It's that part. Okay, yeah. Just gonna go.
I'm getting how people feel about prog now.
Yeah.
I get it.
It's kind of like it does a lot of, like, just like, it is a bunch of horn players getting their shit in.
Let's just start this in 7 and let's just see where it takes us.
Yes. And it just, like, starts at this, and then, like, starts at, Alabama song, and then let's just have fun with it. And, like, and it's fine, and it does that really well. It kind of, like, there's some moments where it's not just, horns. There are some like bass work and some like string work, but, like, most of it is the horn noodling and the horn, like, randomness. And we'll get into the songs, and some of the songs like my context for understanding those songs, but and when we get to that segment. But yeah, it is, like, very much like the textbook jazz and popular music 101. This is jazz of the 60s, and here's this one. Like, and you have to study, and hey, it's gonna be on the midterm, so remember that. And there's definitely, I think it's an example of that, but I think it's definitely maybe not. I don't know if I would call this the shining example. This is like when you want to pull up a YouTube of it being done. You may not be. That's not the, like, prime example that you have to study to understand the greats. This is just like, okay, this is what it literally is. I'm just gonna pull this up on YouTube real quick.
It's like a caricature almost.
Yeah. This is not your, as somebody who hops around on jazz records, and knows where to point and where to avoid. This is an outlier.
Yeah.
They aren't all like this. There's
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like it is so kind of like there in a lot of ways. But let's talk about the tracks. A couple of them are pretty memorable.
Memorable.
Yeah.
Right.
Matt, what would be some of the key tracks?
Alabama Song, the opening track. This is the one that was previously recorded by The Doors, David Bowie, and Lottie Lenya is the woman who sung it originally. Which check out that recording of her on YouTube doing this song. It's real fun. Apparently, the Mike Zverin, the bass trumpet player, he told Eric Dolphy, who was playing the bass clarinet, to play what you feel about Alabama. And so that could explain a lot about the solo. Havana Song.
That is exactly because I'm wearing my Star Trek uniform. That is exactly how the actors of Star Trek Deep Space Nine would describe how Avery Brooks would direct certain episodes, along with playing Captain Sisko. They would say he would describe it like playing jazz. Exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Havana Song. It's the second track, and it's kind of a nice break from the previous track. Like it still gets a little bit weird, but it to me gets in the realm of like, oh yeah, I recognize this as, a jazz song that is not the first one. Mac the Knife. This is the other super well-known one. Bobby Darin, etc. Brett the Pocket Knife.
Yeah.
That's right.
It opens up with just this blisteringly fast, just taking away through it.
What describe that with words? What was that thing in the beginning?
I said it. A
Would...
lot of super fast bass line. Actually, a pretty reasonable tempo for the actual melody, but the background is just going a mile a minute, and as does the ending. Kind of goes back up, but in the middle it goes into this just nice groove where it just more jazz stuff, but it's doable. And I don't know. The whole album is very strange and hard to describe for me. But lastly, either I guess Barbara Song or Barbara Song. Just what a great bass line. Just nice, groovy, all over the place, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Barbara. She was that dude's daughter. And then she's like, nah, I won't date anybody. And then she gets seduced by none other than Mac the Knife. Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. What a plot twist.
That's right.
Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Alabama Song, bass clarinet. Okay, so like everybody's favorite honky woodwind, but bring in the low end. When you want to sound like a goose, but a male goose. It's definitely that nasal honk. But
boy, he can still squeak.
I mean, I know that I am not a woodwind player. I failed at a saxophone when I was in the 6th grade, but I always wonder when I hear somebody doing something with a clarinet, wonder what that sound like on like an alto sax. Like, I wonder why they chose that, or go the other way. What about an oboe? Like, let's be a little.
What about
clarinet?
An oboe?
That's right. What about if we had titles? What about an oboe would be a good title?
There needs to be more oboe. in popular music.
Yeah, double the reeds, double the fun.
What would you say, boys, to a bassoon?
I mean, I wouldn't throw a bassoon
Sure.
out of bed for bringing the jazz. Havana Song, a song about haggling the price of a woman down from $50 to $30. I had to look that up.
Say that on Twitch? Is that allowed?
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, Herr Jacob Schmidt. Oh, we also got to remember that all of this stuff written about America was written by a German dude.
Yes.
But a German dude before World War II. So you think of it's a little different at the time that this was coming out. So yeah, this is there are a lot of representations of the fine state of Florida by these German men. But Havana Song,
I don't blame him.
I mean, there's fucking piano for days. That solo from John Lewis was amazing. I like piano. Mac the Knife, I found the first minute nearly unlistenable. After that, I mean, it's hard because it's like when you have dissonance like of a certain kind. Like it's one thing to have dirt, like you're making noise and you're rocking out, but when it's just like something that's barely off pitch and barely off tempo, like it just breaks my brain because I spend my entire life avoiding those things. So like it was
That's exactly why I liked it, because it was so wrong. Like
well, I mean the beginning wasn't nearly as wrong as the end, but
the opening of Mac the Knife felt like we were really going places, and I dug that. I really did.
I knew where we were going with Mac the Knife, and I was wondering how we were going to get there when I started hearing like that. But like the understated rhythm guitar underneath the bass, like quietly as the bass was in the mix, I found to be very cool. And then in the last minute, we get to hear what every kid at Guitar Center would sound like if they were on the clean channel. Like it was truly boodle deedles, but like with nothing. It was just straight up, like it was speaking in tongues, but with the guitar, and that's okay. Like I'm fine with playing all the notes. Like go work your way up the white keys and the black keys, but like sometimes all in
we haven't done
at
the
same
black
time.
Keys yet.
No, not yet. We got the guy from Ohio here. They're like, you can go call him. Yell out his window.
No,
hey Ohio,
no,
give me black keys.
No. If we're doing a band from Ohio, we're doing like Reliant K. Like
We'll
I would
Devo
even bring
again.
Marilyn Manson before I would bring the Black Keys. Get out of here with that.
Hey.
Sorry, I have a peanut gallery tonight. So.
Woo! Hey.
But
also, side note, can we rewind for a second and hit that sneak diss that Brett just did on all the kids at Guitar Center, like crunching the guitars constantly?
Well, I mean, there's one thing to go and do some improvising, and we have recently had people that improvised just as fast, probably, and did it well and cleanly, and it actually made musical sense because it had a structure to it and a musicality of some kind. Whereas this was, which is like, where I'm judging this as a music album. If there was something going up on stage at the time that they're making all this noise, that makes sense. I've listened to John Williams make strings go screech, like that stuff happens, but. Yeah, not in like when I sit down for jazz, normally you're like, man, I'm going to hear some virtuoso playing. And not that.
Yes. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, it starts out with Alabama Song. The trumpet was great.
Roll Tide.
Drunk man. And then the bass clarinet. Like Brett said, the bass clarinet was there, and it was weird, and there's not a whole lot of bass clarinet. And before he said oboe, I was going to say there needs to be more bass clarinet, but I will replace that with there should be oboe. And then
Mobo?
oboe. And then as
Hashtag
you make
Mo.
your bed, the piano, I think, is kind of the unsung hero. It's flowing way too good underneath everything, bridging just that gap. And then Mac the Knife, the beginning of Mac the Knife was some of the best parts of this album. I don't understand you, Brett. I don't get it. Because the beginning of Mac the Knife, like, that just was like, no, just breakneck pace. Just like, no, we're going to do this. Like, we're playing an old jazz standard way faster. So
I would argue of the. I mean, yes, it's a standard, but like it's a crooner standard. It's not a that kind of.
Yeah.
They're taking the standard and breaking it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
The Havana Song's opening leads in at about 3 minutes into the piano, and that whole bit was really, really enjoyable. Also, once again, Mac the Knife. That was the one thing on this album that felt like my particular flavor of crazy and unhinged that I just really, really enjoy. So I was ready to go on the ride on that song, Mac the Knife.
Yeah. There were some good moments. Alabama song is memorable. Alabama song is memorable, and I know it well because of the Doors version, because of the many times my brother has sang it at karaoke. Except, like I referenced earlier, he would change it to "Show me the way to the next whiskey bar." From that to "Show me the way to the next titty bar." And instead of "I'll tell you we must die," he would say, "We're going to TI's." Which is aka Treasure Island. Yes. But that is the frame of reference I have for that song. So I just couldn't get that out of my head. Also, it's just like it did things and it was okay. And Mac the Knife, again, the amount of times I've heard that song in karaoke by some old guy doing like Mac the Knife. It's just that tinged my experience with that song. So I think
that's understandable.
Yeah,
it's very understandable.
Yeah, I think that's all that I could like really have as far as for like comments on the tracks specifically, because it's just kind of like there was a lot of moments and it kind of like blended into a lot of like things.
So compared to like the Alan Holdsworth and the Johansson Bros, like what would be your compare contrast on Petey's palette? Like what's the Pepsi challenge like?
These we can talk about some conclusions, but I would put this well below those two. I love
like
those.
As for difficulty of following and like were the struggles similar?
I think I had a more fun time and more. I always found it easier to follow. I remember correctly. I had it easier to kind of follow the feel and the musical stylings of those previous ones. Just in like following the emotion and feel and the kind of the style that was going for, where this just kind of like they just did things. But before we get too deep into that, let's talk about conclusive thoughts. Brett, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
I mean, these are skilled musicians, and they're doing something that was of the style of the time, and this is their version of doing a their Garage Day revisited, but with jazz, and that's kind of cool. Like, you can play songs from a few decades ago in your genre in the 60s. That's a cool exercise. Is it something that I love? Probably. I mean, this is not something that I lean towards. I'm not a theater kind of guy anyway. I came to jazz through blues, and the blues is very formulaic. It starts, it repeats, and it ends. And I kind of like standards that are the the Flintstones type, where it's a catchy, like, got a hook kind of thing. Whereas this is something that was a little more difficult for me to like digest, and it took me listening to other people do these songs for me to understand like how much of this was them, how much of this was existing material. So it's coming at it in a way that I've never really done before. So in that way, I don't know that I'm qualified to have a real opinion on this, but it was more difficult to listen to than some other things.
Yeah. Drew, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole? You're muted.
Again.
Man, I can't do a Drew impression.
Me with the muting. But no. We've mentioned in the past, at least back when I used to be on the show, on the regular, used to mention kind of doing your homework sometimes. And with that album cover, as PD so eloquently put it, being like jazz textbook 101, it's something where it takes a bit. First listen through of this, I probably didn't love. I didn't even really like. But as I listened to it more and picked up on more things, it started to grow on me a little bit. It might not be something I go back to frequently, but some of these renditions, like, that's the interesting thing about standards to me, is that you really get to see like where the musicians want to fuck with it, and they really did it. And I dig it. I don't love it, but I dig it and I understand it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. David, what would be your conclusion on this album?
For me, I imagined myself kind of sitting in the jazz club watching these guys play. And by the time it got to the Barbara song, I was kind of ready to leave a tip and go on my way. I was not entirely interested in dissecting this album and picking apart what was going on. I'm not a musician. I'm not a music student, and this did not grab me as much as I hoped it would. But like I said at the beginning, it made me understand the issues some people have with progressive rock. This was not my flavor of music academically. This was not my flavor, but I very much understand it, because there were moments in here where I really felt a little pop in my brain saying, "Oh, let's give a little bit more interest in this and kind of dig into what's going on and hear what they're doing and hear how they're keeping it together." I was not familiar with a lot of the songs that were original renditions. I was coming into this just to listen to the album itself for what it is. And I didn't hate it, but I don't see this hanging around with me for very long. I think that it was really good background, easygoing music. It's good music to have in the kitchen to cook to, but also it's 2020 and we have lo-fi. So I kind of feel like this was part of a time period by musicians in a time period, and I think it had its place, and it was good there.
Yeah, I think that pretty much on board with that exact definition of it. It had its moments, but it just kind of like lost me in multiple ways. A lot of it works, and a lot of it is like interesting to kind of like listen to academically, but it's not always fun. and I think that it's hard to listen to on repeat. Like, I have to take breaks sometimes, or I have to, like, when I'm done with it one time, I'll have to go listen to something else. Like I'll have to listen to some, like, I don't know, some K-pop or something, just to, like, give me high production value and, like, melody and beats, and, like, just Give me that. I know it's give me the sugary cereal that is. Like,
Not
but,
to be confused with the Grateful Dead song "Sugary."
yeah, no. I commend it for what it is. But it certainly is not my cup of tea. Like, it is not my cup of cafe. Yeah, it is not my. I need mines with a little more azúcar. But yeah, last but not least, Matt, what would be your conclusion on this album?
I'm glad I had to go through so much work to find this album. Because if it had just been on Spotify or whatever, I probably would have found Alabama Song. I would have listened to about 30 seconds of it and been like, man, that's kind of weird, and never would have thought about it again. But because I had to go through all this work, buying it on eBay, waiting for it to come, during that time I was like, wait, I can force 4 of my friends to listen to this. It also forced me to listen to it the whole way through multiple times. Exactly.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
I
Is this
did.
a weird sunk cost fallacy that's coming in? Like,
That's
you
right.
spent the money, you
And
spent
for
the
a
time, so
penny.
you have to do it.
No, I was just curious, and
Now you're obligated. You might as well
kind of.
keep chugging on.
no, it's like, it is a lot like, you have to eat your vegetables and you have to do your homework, and especially when it comes to heavily horn-based jazz, I quite often do not do either of those things.
Yes.
And I had no idea, other than I knew there was a bass clarinet solo on Alabama Song before I listened to it. That was the extent of my knowledge about this. Also, like 90% of jazz standards written before 1940 are show tunes, so take that for what you will. No, I think the first track does a lot to turn you off from the rest of the album, me anyway. But once you get past that, there's a bunch of, if you're interested in jazz already and you're kind of in that mentality, in that world, I think there's a lot to gain from this album. If you can get over that bass clarinet hump, which is very fun in its own right, of like, man, that's a crazy bass clarinet honking squeaky solo. But yeah, no, it's homework, but it's the enjoyable homework.
Yes. I could see that. Yeah.
And I'll probably listen to it again.
Yes.
At least if it probably won't skip on iTunes.
Yes, probably won't skip. Put that on the box. Let's get down. All right, those are our thoughts on the Sextet of Orchestra U.S.A. Featuring Eric Dolphy, theater music of Kurt Weill. I'm gonna have to truncate
Just
a lot
really
of
rolls
that.
off the tongue.
I'm gonna have to truncate that for the YouTube video for sure. That being said,
That's some fantastic SEO, though.
yeah,
Like, it tells you everything.
that being said,
Also,
now we
it turns out that most of these songs, at least some of them, are on YouTube, and I could have listened to it that way, but it didn't. That also did not occur to me until yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We've done that once for an album that's impossible to find.
Yes,
It can be done, but it ain't great.
It ain't.
No,
great.
it's not.
Sometimes if you have to do that with an album, it probably is not an album worth listening to.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mattress Disco.
Exactly.
I'm not.
That being said, now we get to the main event of the evening. We get to the moment we've all been waiting for. Our haiku reviews. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haikumuro numero uno. Brett, what is your haiku?
Different kind of jazz. Not the one that I lean towards. And that's all right. And that is all right. Damn, can't even count tonight.
Drew, what is your haiku?
Or just don't even tell him you're checking it out.
Some horny music that does a lot with the source. Good old school jazz licks.
Horny licks.
Edie.
David, what is your haiku?
So uncalled for. My haiku. Well played, and that's fine. Album did not hold with me. Audience? Themselves.
Yes. We're not gonna go be mean and just play a video of a monkey peeing in his own mouth like fucking Pitchfork. My haiku. It's some jazz songs here that goes too many places. Not too fond of it.
You don't say.
Matt, what is your haiku?
Crazy jazz nonsense for subjecting my friends to squeaky and groovy solos.
Yeah. Those are our thoughts on theater music of Kurt Weill, featuring all these people. You can not find it on Spotify. Go find it on YouTube. Go find it on maybe eBay, at Amazon, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. So good luck with that. I think you can find it on YouTube, at least mostly. What you will be able to find on Spotify is presumably, I believe, next week's record. And it's going to be a guest episode. And the guest is Drew. Since you're here already, why did you tell us what you're going to bring for us next week?
So
not.
I decided that this year's been kind of weird. There's been a lot going on. I don't know if people have noticed in the social sphere, the political sphere, and the pandemic sphere. So I figured in the middle of that, having one of my favorite social commentary groups dropping an album felt fitting. So I decided if I was going to come back, I was going to bring Run the Jewels with RTJ4.
Spoiler, I loved it.
Yes. So look.
Killer Mike and LP made a good record. No.
Yeah.
Come on. That can't be right.
We'll see. It's up in the air. We'll find out about it next week. But that'll
Spoiler, I liked it.
Yeah. But that'll be next week, and this is this week. I haven't even listened to it, and I already love it. I'm just gonna spoil that. But that'll be next week, and this is this week, and you can of course find us all over the internet. Brett, I'm all lost. David is at Call Me DJM. Matt is at MRiddickW. Brett is at HibbityBibberDHIBBIBBIBBRD. Drew is still at XDruciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli.net for listen to other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and on Twitch. Follow us on Twitch so you can come hang out with us and talk and while we do the podcast. We do Record Breakers on Wednesdays. We do D&D on Tuesdays. We do, for now, Astroneer on Thursdays with me, Brett, and Daisy. We're getting pretty into that. We're going to do some automation pretty soon if you're watching live, or we will have already done it if you're watching this afterwards. But check that out. Space Trucking on Thursdays. Find us everywhere you find podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify,
Amazon? Did you get on Amazon?
Yes, Amazon Podcasts, SoundCloud, bunch of places. Like, share, subscribe, slap the bell, hit the walrus, spank the monkey.
Pluck the platypus.
Until next time.
Physically abuse John Lennon.
Hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
We are so getting TOS'd.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.